When we talk about passion for the organ, there is one thing that needs to be said right away. The organ is not an instrument people approach easily. If you think of a child starting to study music, the organ is almost never the first instrument that comes to mind. We think of the piano, the violin, the guitar, the drums, instruments that are part of everyday life, that you see everywhere, that belongs to common imagination. The organ does not. And not because people do not like it, but because they rarely come across it. For people who are not insiders, the organ is usually seen as a church instrument, something connected to the Mass, to liturgical celebration, to a context that today feels distant, sometimes even foreign, especially for younger generations. Organ repertoire has slowly closed itself into a world of its own, a small universe separated from the rest of classical music. And unless you already have a strong interest in music, you rarely get in contact with it. If I think about the country where I was born and raised, Italy, this becomes even clearer. Churches are mostly attended by older people, and young people simply do not have the chance to get close to this instrument. And if you never get close to it, you cannot fall in love with it. For this reason, very often people do not arrive at the organ directly. They arrive there through another instrument. Most organists started as pianists, and it is completely normal. The piano is widespread, accessible, present in homes, schools, and music schools. Then, at some point, something happens. A concert, a church, an unexpected moment, a listening experience. And many pianists discover the organ because of the sound, the color, the size of the instrument, the sense of space and power that no other instrument can offer. In my case, however, it was different. I define myself as a pure organist, and from the very first day I studied organ, I wanted to play the organ, not the piano. And even when only I had an electronic keyboard, I would choose the organ sound. I pushed teachers and situations in that direction. And here I have to say something clearly. I was lucky. I grew up in an environment where music was always present. At home we listened to a lot of music and we went to concerts. I clearly remember a concert in a church, hearing a large organ at full power, a tutti so strong that the benches, the stained glass windows, even the air itself were vibrating. In that moment, I thought something very simple. I want to play that instrument. Not for rational reasons, for a physical feeling. I wanted to experience again that power. As you grow older, especially during adolescence, passion takes on a different shape. You have already studied for several years, you have a technical foundation, and at home, almost always there is a piano. But the real organ is not at home. It is in churches. And this is where you enter in a very specific reality. In many countries, the organ is not considered a profession. It is considered a service, almost a form of volunteer work. You can play, then instead of sitting on the benches, go to the organ and accompany a few chords, some music. And this is a huge topic, and I could start a discussion here that begins today and never really ends. What happens in practice is that exchange situations are created. The priest or the church community allows you to practice on the organ, they give you access to the instrument, and they give you the keys. In return, you play for the services on Sundays, on feast days, sometimes all of them. And I experienced this myself. I played for years, every Sunday and every holiday without ever being paid. And the problem is not only the lack of payment. Often there is not even satisfaction. because the enthusiastic young organist who wants to explore the sound and use the full instrument is sometimes seen as a disturbance. Not always, but it happens. This is the typical picture of a young teenage organ enthusiastic. They study, they spend time in churches, they accept compromises just to be able to play. The next step, when possible, is to gain independence, getting an electronic organ at home, finally being able to study properly without depending on schedules, keys, or permissions. And this is often the moment when internally many start to consider themselves organists. This whole world is beautiful, it's formative, it is intense. It is an incredible training ground for the mind and for personal growth. Every difficulty overcome is a small victory. Music teaches perseverance, the idea that shortcuts do not exist. Just like in sports, if you do not train, you do not improve. And this is exactly what makes it so pure. But precisely because this world is so protected, so beautiful, so all-encompassing, it hides the first great illusion. When you study, when you grow, inside this dream, reality stays out of frame. The question of what comes next does not exist yet. The topic of work is not present, there is no urgency. But sooner or later, that question arrives. It arrives for everyone. And that is where a split happens. Some people stay inside this bubble and the organ remains a passion, a service, or a hobby. That is where the path truly starts to change, and that is where we will begin in the next video. If this topic interests you and you want to follow the rest of this journey, subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow me on my social media so you don't miss the next videos of this series, Making It as an Organist. Alongside these talks, you will also find educational videos, lessons, detailed content, and full organ performances. See you in the next episode.